Hi and welcome to another Tech Tips with me, Colin Smith, lead instructor at the Developer Academy. Today I want to talk a little bit about fundamentals and particularly about JavaScript fundamentals. If you want to be able to be a React developer or JavaScript developer, one of the real fundamentals that you need to work with is using and filling arrays and changing arrays. So with that in mind, I want to talk to you about two functions within JavaScript. These are the map and the filter functions. These two functions are absolutely essential if you want to get started with JavaScript. So what we're going to do is I'll show you how to use both of them and how to use them in the React app as well. So without further ado, let's get started. So we have here an example file. I've got a very simple array which has got some numbers in it, and I've also got a kind of a code stub, if you like, with the filter already set up. So the way that filter works is filter is a function of an array. So you use it like this, and you pass it a callback. Now, if you're not sure what a callback is, we'll have a video on that as well about callbacks and how these work. But basically, what a callback is a function that you would pass to a function. So in this case, this function takes one parameter, which is num, which is the item, and you can call this item if you want. You can change it to whatever you like. And you've got an arrow function, so the definition is within these curly braces here. Now, what you can do in shorthand is you can write this slightly differently, but I'll write it fully so you can see what's happening first of all. So this function here within filter is got to be a true or a false. It's got to be able to be determined true or false, because what's going to happen is, depending on the true or false for each item, they will go into this new array from the filter. So let me show you how that works. So I can say if num is less than 50, return true. Otherwise, I'm just going to return false. I could put else in there, but I'm just going to leave it like that. So what's going to happen is, if I just save this now, and I'm just going to console log out what new array is, so you can see how that works. What's going to happen is each of these items in turn is going to be evaluated within these curly braces here. And if it's less than 50, it'll return true. And if it's more than that, it's going to return false. So every time it returns true, that item is going to be put into new array. So if we just run this now, I'll just run this with node, example filter, you can see that each item within our list is less than 50. So it's filtered out the 34, the 78, this one, and this one, because that is actually less than 50. So that's how it works. Now, if you wanted to write this in shorthand, you can. And you don't have to have all the return true or false or anything. So if I just did all of this, I can get rid of all that. So rather than using the curly braces here, if you want to do it in shorthand, you can just put it in normal brackets, num less than 50. So for very simple filters, this should work just fine. There we go. So that's working just fine. 34, minus 123, and 0. You can also pass other things through to filter. So if you wanted to be a little bit more advanced with what the filter's actually showing, so you can actually pass 3 things in total through to filter. So you can pass the item, which is the first thing, the index, so that's 0 for the first item and so on. And you can also pass through the array itself. Oh, this is a copy of the original array. So I'm going to call that ARR. You don't necessarily have to use all of these, but they might be useful, particularly if you're going to do something more advanced. So, for example, let's say if I wanted to extend this out, and I want to say, actually, I want to return all the items in the array that are less than 50, but only for the first 3 items. So I can say if the index is less than 3 and num is less than 50. Okay? So that's the first 3 items less than 50 should be in our new array. Otherwise, I don't want it. So useful if you're looking at things like top scores and things like that, and you just want to have a certain amount in there, and you only want to look at a certain part of the array as well. You could also sort this array, I suppose, if you wanted to do that in a little bit more detail. So you can see there that here we go. So out of the first 3 scores, there's only the first one that is less than 50, and that's the one that was returned. So the other example that we've got here is when you've got the array in there. So it might well be that you want to actually change the array and move the array around. If you want to use that, then pass that ARR through as well. So that's filter. And filter will create you a new array and you can do something with that. Oh, great. Now, if you wanted to actually modify and look at these values, there's another function called the map function. So the map function works very similarly to what the filter function does, except it is .map. And we can still pass through the item, the index, and a copy of the original array as well. Now this time, if I just do if num less than 50, return true, otherwise return false. Show you how this works. So the code is exactly the same, except it's a map function now. I need to console log it, of course. And that is a new array. Okay. So this time you see that it's not the number that's returned, it's actually the value here, return true or return false. So map is used for a slightly different use case, and in this case we want to be able to look at each of the values and do something with it. So we can do this without actually creating a new array. So let's just slightly tweak this. So let's say that we had an example where each number within our array we need to add 5 to. Okay, so what we would do is we would say here return num plus 5. So what that will do is it will make a copy of the array, but with every item with added 5. Really useful. You might actually say, well, actually, depending on the index, we want to change these values by a certain amount. And you would do that as well. You could even change this into a dictionary. So let's say you wanted to return an object where the ID is the index and num is num. You could do that. So now, when I save that and run it, you can see now we've actually broken these out almost into an object dictionary, if you like, of value pairs. So we can do lots of things with the map function. Now, where the map function really comes into its own is when we're using it within a different context. So let's say that we've got a React app. Okay, and this is often how I would use this in my own applications. So in this React app, I've got an array, and it's got 3 items in the array, which are these objects here. Normally what I would do is I would actually use these objects in order to create something on the page. So basically pump them out to the page. These could come from a database, they could come from an API call, but this is effectively how I would use that. How I would normally do this is I would create a function. So let's have a function for build rows. And what that function is going to do is it's going to use my array.map. And for each item in the array, it's going to do something with that item. And in this case, what I want to do is I want to return some JSX. So let's return some JSX. So I want to return a div. Let's have the key as the item.id because it's going to be unique. Important that you do that with React so it knows which of these items are actually unique. Let's pump out in a H3 the name of that person, so item.name, and then let's do in a p tag item.role. Okay, so what will happen is the resultant map, let's create this const, oh, we could just return it, can't we? So the array that's created by this function will contain a set of components to pump out to the page for each of the things within our array. So really useful if you're doing that iteration through. So now that I've got that, what I need to do is I need to put it into our code. So let's put it down here, and I'm just going to call build rows there. Okay, now let's have a look at how that works. And there we go. So you can see each time the page is executed, our function is created, and for each item in our array, it's pumping out a div and it's pumping out some information about the people within that. So that's exactly how I would use that. Now, obviously, if you wanted to do this slightly differently, what you could do is you could actually put some conditions on there where only certain things in this item array will actually use, and we can use that index and we can use that copy of the array as well. So I could actually say, well, actually, if index is greater than 0, then do this. Okay, let's just do that. So I can show you how that works. Okay, you can see there it's missed off the first one. So really useful, the map function, in order to do that. Hope you've enjoyed that. Hope that you find that useful. It is really the cornerstone of JavaScript, whether you're doing Node, whether you're doing React, whether you're doing Express, that you understand how to use and reuse that map and those filter functions. And stay tuned for some more useful videos to help you in your coding journey. Bye for now.